It's the morning after the hearings, the Senate hearings, where Judge Kavanaugh faced off against Dr. Ford in a spectacle that riveted the nation. And here, from my perspective up in the Berkeley Hills, it's an appropriately dreary day, not only here in the Bay Area, but also across America. And I thought I'd take a moment to reflect on what's happening with this, because there's so much beneath the surface of this spectacle that played itself out in the living rooms all across the land. There was a time when if one nation was at war with another nation, they might try to assemble armies or various forms of military equipment, aircraft, and so on, and they would invade. They might march across national boundaries. But that era has long since passed, and we live in an era these days of cyber warfare, cyber terrorism. And we now know that Russia and perhaps other countries successfully infiltrated our social networks and our channels of communication with one very clear objective, and that was to sow seeds of acrimony, to divide our nation into groups that would do the work of the invading armies. These groups would go to war with each other. And the groups are the ones that we're all now well familiar with. It was Republicans against Democrats, liberals against conservatives, blacks against whites. And yesterday, we saw the spectacle of women against men. It's been said many times in many contexts that a nation at war with itself cannot stand. A house divided cannot stand. And the Russian strategy was and is working. So the question is, what can we do to fortify ourselves against this type of infiltration? Now, for those who aren't familiar with the vision that I've been holding out for TruthSphere, I'm going to give a quick and dirty summary as to what it's all about, because it's designed to combat precisely what's happening in the realm of cyber warfare. The Russian hackers pose as real people and post fake news, outrageous statements that have a whiff of plausibility to it. And they know which whiffs are most likely to attract the noses of which people that are surfing the web at any given moment. They know the, what's the term they use? The hot button issues. They know what buttons to push. I remember on the eve of the election, I ran into a young lady who struck me as fairly intelligent, and I asked her who she was going to vote for, and she said it really doesn't matter because they're all the same. And I pressed her a little bit, and she said, oh yes, well, Obama has been running this child prostitution ring from the White House. And I went, oh my God. I went back and looked it up, and there were like 3.5 million hits for that search term. These type of outlandish stories, many of which are completely fabricated, take hold, take root. And for people who are surfing the web, they don't have the time or the inclination to verify them. And in some cases, if it strikes them as plausible, they'll share it with friends or retweet it, and they become known in the trade as useful idiots. That's what they are. They're idiots. They're sharing stuff that's false. Now, TruthSphere is designed to combat this by using not only the tools of technology, but the wisdom of the crowd to come up with a simplified score for every website, for every person, for every source, for everybody in public life, for every company, for every product. Initially, I call it a truth score, but it might be called a trust index. It might be called a performance rating. Who knows? In any case, it's a number, a simple number from 1 to 100, so that as you're surfing the web and you come across an article, there's a sphere called the truth sphere, and inside that truth sphere is this number from 1 to 100, which is essentially reputation quantified. It's the reputation of the person, the source, and let's just say that the truth score is 56. If you're reading that, that should give you pause. And if you want to learn more about how that number was arrived at, you can double click on the truth sphere and drill down to whatever level of detail you want to determine precisely how that number was arrived at. So let's talk about exactly what the process is here, how the truth score or the trust index is arrived at. There are 3 primary components to truth sphere. There's the truth score that we've talked about, and then there is the truth force. And this is the crowd of people who in many cases are experts, but in other cases they're simply people like you and me who may have some kind of specialized knowledge about a situation or a person. For example, take the case of Judge Kavanaugh. Now, Judge Kavanaugh, according to some sources, was a heavy drinker in his high school and college days, and maybe today. And some of his friends might know firsthand as to whether or not this allegation is true. If these people were all part of this network, the crowd, the truth force, as I call it, they could be plugged into the truth machine via an app. I call it the killer app for democracy. It's called ALERT, which is an acronym for Activating Leaders and Expert Response Teams. So, an allegation is made about Judge Kavanaugh and his drinking habits. An alert goes out to the Truth Force. Now, how many people are on this Truth Force? I'm assuming that if Facebook can create a network of 2 billion people, it's entirely within the realm of possibility that just here in America we could get 10 million, 50 million, maybe 100 million people to download that app so that they could become informational nodes in the truth sphere. And so an alert is sent out to, let's say, these 25 million people who have downloaded the app. And each of them have indicated what their potential areas of expertise or interest are. And the alert goes out, does anybody have specialized knowledge as to Judge Kavanaugh's drinking habits in high school? And of the 50 million people, maybe 1,000 have indicated, or through the information that's gathered, some potential knowledge about this issue. And of those 1,000 people, maybe 100 respond. And so you have nodes of information inputting data into the truth sphere. And this brings us to the third aspect of the truth sphere, the truth machine. These are the algorithms that provide contextual weighting for all the informational sources that come in. Since people are constantly inputting data into the system, the accuracy, reliability of that data can be compared against the truth, against the facts of the matter. And if someone, a member of the Truth Force, is consistently on target, they'll have a higher truth rating than other members, and thus their inputs will receive a higher algorithmic weighting in the eventual determination. So the question is put out to the Truth Force: was Judge Kavanaugh a heavy drinker in high school? And the information comes back that says 76% say that yes, he was a heavy drinker in high school. This is easily understood, not only by the media, but by everybody. Moreover, let's take the example of Dr. Ford. Information can be gathered about her public pronouncements, her statements, people who know her, to generate a truth score for Judge Ford. Let's just say, for the sake of argumentation here, that she received a high truth score, let's say 86. And Judge Kavanaugh, on the basis of his judicial renderings and public statements in his public life, had a truth score of, say, 72. This is valuable information for anybody who might want to make a judgment about the reliability of what these people were saying. And so, the hearing, rather than devolving into what I saw a headline yesterday, fury outweighs facts at Kavanaugh hearing. Instead, it would be facts outweigh fury, because we have a reliable determination, a trusted source of truthfulness in society. Now, of course, there are a lot more issues that have to be addressed. Bias within the system. Bias can be mapped, and there are other videos that I will make that will explain exactly how it can be mapped and controlled and accounted for within the system. But this is kind of a broad brush view as to what's happening in America today with the infiltration of cyber warfare and what America can do to combat this using a system similar, some facsimile of Truth Sphere. Now, one question that's immediately posed to me is, does Truth Sphere exist today? Is it possible? My response is that Truth Sphere as such exists primarily in my own mind right now. But there are similar systems that have been successfully instituted. One of my classmates from Harvard Business School, Ray Dalio, instituted a system called Radical Transparency at his hedge fund, Bridgewater Associates, in which they generated what they call a believability rating for everybody who worked for Bridgewater. Whether this system was responsible for Bridgewater's solid performance, now I believe it's the largest hedge fund in the world, is open to debate. But clearly it's a system that has merit. In fact, there's a system being instituted in China right now for 1 billion people called the social credit system. And that system is similar, not identical, to the Truth Sphere. The primary difference being that the social credit system in China is administered by the state. And in my mind, at least, that becomes a little bit creepy. Truth Sphere, in my mind, is administered not by the state and not by one company, but rather by a consortium of companies that might include tech companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon and Microsoft and others that have pioneered in data transmission, data gathering, and artificial intelligence, and integrated together with universities, nonprofits, and others who all come together in a spirit of public-mindedness. Come together recognizing that there is a vital and perhaps mortal threat to American democracy at work as I make this video right now. Truth Sphere might never be realized in the form that I imagine it, but I'm putting one step in front of another right now in the belief that this vision is certainly better than what we have right now.